in just moments, the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. He will join us for his first sit-down television interview since leaving the White House. No topic is off limits. No question is off the table. We'll cover Joe Biden, the radical left, 2024, COVID-19, the crisis on our southern border, the mob, the media, and everything in between. Now, without a doubt, President Trump remains the most dominant force in American politics today. Even now, 3 months from talks, the world, the country listens. So tonight, for the hour, we welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump. Mr. President, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Sean.
All right, so I know a lot of people that are around as hard as you did when you were in the White House, except you play a little golf more. That you're keeping an insane schedule, 7 days a week. You really don't stop.
Well, we're seeing a lot of people.
That was that they were putting a bounty on the
bounty,
heads.
the big bounty deal. Yeah. And now they say that it was a hoax, just like everything else. So it's a sad thing. You get impeached for doing nothing wrong, then you get a second impeachment for doing nothing wrong. So it's been pretty wild when you think about it, and very unfair. So we're working very hard, and I think you're going to see something that will start to take place in 22 and will culminate in 24, and you're going to see a lot of big things and great things.
We follow his schedule very closely, less than one event a day. What do you see? How do you grade him 3 months in?
So he's going to be 79 years old. That is not old. I know many people in their late 80s that are years old. He said, I feel better than I did 20 years ago. 78, 79 is not old. But he, look, I don't think it's even appropriate for me to comment on that. It sort of speaks for itself. I mean, people can make their... And the last thing I want to do is go down, because when Gerald Ford went down, it was not good. Now, when Biden went down, the press didn't cover it. I mean, if you look at...
Well, in fairness, his aide said that the wind, it was very windy, the wind might...
You can turn it at angles, and so you don't ever have too much. I've never seen too much wind. You can get a little windy, but not the kind of wind that blows you over. But if you look at mainstream media, or as you say, lamestream media, we should be doing business with Russia. We should be getting along with Russia. Instead of forcing Russia to go into the hands of China, the worst thing you could do is put China and Russia together. And they're together, and they get forced together. The Russia for the relationship that we would have with Russia. But I got along well with Putin. I got along well with President Xi until the COVID came in, or the China virus, or whatever you want to call it. When that came in, it was a hold. But we made a great trade deal. Our farmers are making more, the highest they've ever been. They're doing great because China's buying so much. This was the trade deal that we made. But after COVID, trade just didn't seem that important to me, and we did other things, but it was too bad.
Let me go to one of your suspects. I would argue if it was a daycare center, you'd be shut down and charged with child abuse.
They would not stand for it, and they're playing it down as much as they can play it down. It's a horrible situation, could destroy our country. People are pouring, tripled and quadrupled coming in, because that's pouring in right now. Drugs are pouring in. We had it so tight. We were doing so well. All he had to do was leave it alone. Stay in Mexico was a big deal. That wasn't easy to get. We went through court systems. We went through everything. Well, all three of them. But they're going to be taking in billions and billions of dollars. And what's going to happen is that money is going to go to people that are going to bring people into our country. One other thing, they're sending us, not their best people, they're sending us people that are coming in through our southern border alongside of Mexico. What they're doing is insane. They're going to destroy our country.
Let me ask.
At least one vaccine dose, and 25% of all Americans are now fully vaccinated.
Starting today, every adult across the nation is eligible to get a COVID shot.
Folks, I have good news. Everybody is eligible as of today to get.
I honestly thought there was a chance I'd be locked in the captain's quarters, talking to a painting for the rest of my life, urinating into jars, growing a long, scraggly beard, and rolling my eyes at dumb, maritime-themed puns. Thankfully, that ship has sailed. I'm sorry. January.
We use all of our regulatory tools to bring vaccine available for the entire American population by January.
In terms of the number of vials, what we're shooting for is to try to make sure that we have 100 million doses in that first January timeline in terms of what we're looking at.
He's so cagey. He's talking about vaccine distribution like he's telling a loan shark when he can expect his money. I'm going to get you your money. I got a job now and I stopped gambling. No more betting on the ponies for me. No siree. Vaccine broker deals between rivals to produce more vaccine and quickly ramped up a plan to use FEMA to set up federally run mass vaccination sites across the country, which for some reason Trump failed to do. Maybe because he didn't know what FEMA stood for. But as encouraging as the vaccine rollout has been here in the U.S., it's been much less encouraging throughout the rest of the world, thanks in large part to vaccine hoarding by wealthy countries. Global COVID cases just hit a new weekly record, making this the worst week worldwide. Extra vaccines to countries that need them. We certainly don't need them here. As a country, we don't do well with excess. We'll start having raves where Wall Street bros and social media influencers pass vials of Pfizer in bathrooms while dancing poorly to club music. Is that jarring sound, and then I'm like, oh, right, the club. Also, it's in our own interest to share our vaccines as well. If we don't slow down the spread of the virus around the world, then more variants will emerge, and we can't just stop them from coming here by... Is he some kind of sorcerer? How does he do it? They're watching Biden like a bunch of prehistoric apes watching man make the first stone tools. Well, this isn't going to be fair now. Remember, Republicans have only won the presidential popular vote once in the last 32 years. They're used to being unpopular, doing popular stuff, even if it's obvious to the rest of us. Republicans are so desperate to criticize Biden, their only move is to call him a puppet. Yesterday, Fox News interviewed GOP Congressman Devin Nunes, who, speaking of puppets, looks like his eyes were hastily sewn onto his face. Remember that guy? He always behind Biden.
The question is we don't see a lot of Biden every day. I don't know, but of course, nobody's really calling him out on, what is his schedule? What is he actually doing? I think a lot of us wonder, and we didn't even see him in the campaign. So, somebody clearly is behind.
I read one of his tweets and thought, who's making him say that? But come on, Biden was literally just in the Rose Garden for a press conference with the Prime Minister of Japan on Friday. I know you guys only go on Fox News, but do you also only watch Fox News? I'm guessing anytime Biden gives a speech, Fox throws to some standby episode of Jeanine Pirro's short-lived wine tasting show, Jeanine Pinot. Now, the first thing we always do is inhale the bouquet. Smells like wine to me, which means we're on to step 2, downing it in one big-ass gulp. Give me my 3-pounders. Trump, meanwhile, spent so little time in the Oval Office, they could have rented it out on Airbnb, which, by the way, would have been a great early 2000s comedy starring Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn. Oh, geez, that's a bust of Abraham Lincoln? I thought that was an ashtray. Leftist when he quoted a Politico article about Biden's communication strategy and added this, invites the question, is he really in charge? On Sunday, Cornyn was asked about that tweet and blamed Twitter.
My question, I guess, is, Senator Cornyn, is that helpful to be
watching your dad twerk? Dad, knock it off. You're getting loose change everywhere. That's how at a loss these guys are to criticize Biden. And by the way, that's not to say there aren't things to criticize. There absolutely are. For example, last week, Biden announced, then quickly walked back his decision to break a campaign pledge and keep in place
raising the Trump-era cap on refugees because of bad political optics.
I'm sorry, you were worried about optics? What's worse in terms of optics, breaking a campaign promise to lift a cruel and historically low refugee cap set by a racist predecessor, or send you to boarding school where you could get straight A's, but if you're 5 minutes late for dinner, he'll say something cutting without looking up from his paper, like, you call yourself an Exeter man? Voters were craving competent governments after 4 years of cruelty, racism, and neglect, and now they're rewarding Biden for it in the...
All right, please be seated. Members of the jury, I understand. Plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, defendant. Verdict, count 1. Court file number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Members of the jury, I'm now going to ask you individually if these are your true and correct verdicts. Please respond yes or no. Juror number 2, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 9, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 19.
Yes.
Juror number 89, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 91, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 92, are these your true and correct verdicts?
This is called polling the jury.
I have to thank you on behalf of the people of the state of Minnesota for not only jury service, but heavy-duty jury service. What I'm going to ask you to do now is to follow the deputy back into your usual room, and I will join you in a few minutes to answer questions and to advise. All right, be seated. With the guilty verdicts returned, we're going to have Blakely, you may file a written argument.
Have the court revoke the defendant's bail and remand him into custody pending sentencing.
Bail is revoked, bond is discharged, and the defendant is remanded to the custody of the Hennepin County Sheriff. Anything further?
All
right. Thank you. We're adjourned.
Second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. He is now being taken off to the Hennepin County Jail. Sentencing will take place in 8 weeks, about 2 months from now.
And it was a noticeable difference.
Right behind him, lunged forward and began strangling him. 22-year-old Michael Hassey Jr. Saturday night, he responded to a ride request in front of Cask Social Kitchen in Tampa.
I called the Uber for my mother.
Sleep most of the ride until a few blocks from her home in unincorporated St. Pete.
Start screaming some curse words at her at the time, has not done a single thing.
Hassey Jr. says he's called Uber and is disappointed that no one has reached out.
I'd stay away from Uber.
A welder by trade, Hassey Jr. says for him. Spoke with some of her neighbors today who say this was very out of character for her. They say that she's a nurse, and we did check with the fence. Reporting live in Pinellas County, Christine McClarty, 8 on your.
That he did not act as a reasonable police officer should have. And 2, that he's the actual causative factor in George Floyd's death, that he was a substantial factor in George Floyd's death. There's a great analysis over illegal insurrection, which has been doing excellent work covering the day-to-day on this case because they saw George Floyd die. That's true for presumably tens of millions of people who saw the tape of George Floyd dying in the first place. So none of that should have been allowed in court. That's going to be an issue on appeal. There will be issues on appeal, for sure, with regard to the treatment of the jury. Jury goes the wrong way here. The jury is therefore racist. And that if an individual juror sees fit to find reasonable doubt in these cases, it must be that juror's life will be ruined. I mean, honest to God, it will take a person of extraordinary bravery to actually examine the facts in this case. Stake in fomenting division in the country that is going to end with more violence and more looting and more rioting unless they get their way. It is a form of political blackmail that the media are now engaged in with the American people. They're engaged in a game of political chicken, and they're using other people's businesses. They're not even trying to hide the ball. So, for example, here is CNN's senior legal analyst, Laura Coates, on Twitter. She tweeted out, quote, "Defense begins the closing by defining reasonable doubt, not with why Derek Chauvin is innocent. Think about that." So another in which, by the way, South Central Los Angeles, which was largely black, was burned to the ground in large part, in which Korean business owners were targeted. She called that an LA uprising. An LA uprising. She says, "I said in 101 different ways violence is not right."
We've got to fight for justice, but I am very hopeful, and I hope that we're going to get a verdict that will say guilty, guilty, guilty. And if we don't,
This is an issue for appeal.
I wish elected officials would stop talking about this case, especially in a manner that is disrespectful to the rule of law and to the judicial branch and our function. I think if they want to give their opinions, they should.
Maxine Waters is one of the worst actors in Congress, and you guys will never disown your own radicals. It's fairly impressive, truly, for the Democratic Party. You have to admire the solidarity. I've been told over and over by friends of mine who are Democrats, look at these Republicans and how do you get more confrontational? Was that the manner of the civil rights movement? Because I feel like Nancy Pelosi should know better since she was alive for it. She says, I myself think we should take our lead from the George Floyd family. They've handled this with great dignity and no ambiguity or lack of misinterpretation by the other side.
President, to you, he has been very clear that he recognizes the issue of police violence against people of color, communities of color, is one of great anguish, and it's exhausting and quite emotional at times. As you know,
in fact, the stuff you heard her say, she didn't actually say. Here's Don Lemon saying she wasn't inciting violence. I take this at face value because Don Lemon is an objective news source.
Do you really think Maxine Waters is calling for violence? Maxine Waters is not calling for violence.
If they don't give you what you want, then you should get super confrontational, like more confrontational than you've been in the past, in a city that nearly burned down a year ago. Don Lemon, objective journalist. These people, they want the conflict. They want the conflict. They think the conflict is good. They think obstacle. Derek Chauvin is a tool and an obstacle for these people. Due process is an obstacle for these folks. Individual rights are an obstacle, and Maxine Waters is a tool. Therefore, Maxine Waters will be defended, and due process will be thrown out the window, and you're just supposed to eat it.